It may come as a surprise to students of ancient Greece and its patently misogynistic customs and beliefs that the most powerful symbol of the Hellenic civilization, the most influential and revered person in religious, domestic, and even military matters, was a woman, or rather, a series of women. Today, on the Medical Humanities Minute, Divine Madness, the Oracle at Delphi. Delphi, nestled on the steep lower slope of Mount Parnassus in central Greece, was considered the navel of the world by the ancient Greeks, who believed that it had once belonged to Gaia, the earth goddess, who left her child, the serpent Python, to guard it. Apollo, the powerful god of knowledge and prophecy, among many other things, and the one god who could communicate between his father Zeus and mortal men, killed Python and took Delphi for himself. He created an oracle there, and chose as his medium the Pythia, named after Python, a local woman over the age of 50, through whom he would communicate his prophecies and foretell the future. The Delphic oracle became famous across Greece, far outshining other oracles around the region, and by the 5th century BCE, there was no greater authority in ancient Greece, no more powerful voice, no more revered or influential person than the woman who, it was claimed, was the sole conduit, the very voice of Apollo. She had the power to topple kings and to authorize military campaigns or cancel them, because her prophecies and clairvoyance were so often right that they made the Greeks believe themselves militarily invincible. When one Pythia died, another took her place, and so the mystical knowledge of these extraordinary women were passed down for centuries, their methods and esoteric practices kept largely secret. Plutarch, the philosopher who once served as a priest at Delphi, claimed that 3 oracles operated in unison, 2 working to receive answers to the supplicants' questions, and 1 as a sort of assistant. People from all walks of life would travel from all over Greece to ask questions of the great oracle. Ordinary citizens would often ask for help with their sex lives. Kings would ask for advice about a forthcoming military campaign, and politicians pleaded to know the future outcome of a particular political move. She allegedly provided thousands of answers, and was said to have changed the course of history on several occasions. Considering that at the time, men dominated public life and were often openly sexist, if not outright misogynistic, we get the word from the god Heracles Misogynous, who sang ballads on hating women. It's extraordinary that women should have held so much power and been so universally revered. Women usually were to be kept at home and were rarely even allowed outside. Female infanticide was common, and even at Delphi itself, female petitioners were not allowed to approach the oracle themselves. They had to have a man ask their questions for them. And yet the Pythia, the mystical woman considered the mouthpiece of Apollo, was so admired that at times the Greeks even gave her credit for things she never prophesied, and excused mistakes or false predictions as errors of interpretation. It is impossible to overstate her importance to Greek life. The modern world simply has nothing like her. But there is another reason the oracle at Delphi is so extraordinary. Not only did she receive prophecies and glimpses of the future from Apollo, it was what the process did to her that made her famous. Socrates called it divine madness. The oracle would sit upon a high bronze tripod centered over a large crack in the temple floor, from which issued vapors that were said to be the sacred pneuma, the soul or breath of Apollo himself. Breathing in these vapors caused her to enter a kind of trance, her body trembling and swaying, her words at times incoherent, her entire being completely taken over, it seemed, by Apollo. She spoke rhythmically, leaving the priests of Apollo to interpret the answers and relay them to the supplicant. Often her answers made no sense, At other times, her forecasts were precise and specific, but most often they were delivered in riddles. When asked by a lawyer from Athens by the name of Solon whether Athens should invade the island of Salamis, the oracle replied, "First sacrifice to the warriors who once had their home in this island, whom now the rolling plain of fair Asopia covers, laid in the tombs of heroes with their faces turned to the sunset." Solon took this to mean that Salamis should be annexed for Athens, and promptly captured it. When he visited her again to ask about constitutional reforms he planned to introduce, namely democracy, she replied, "Seat yourself now amidships, for you are the pilot of Athens. Grasp the helm fast in your hands. You have many allies in your city." Again, he took this to mean Apollo approved of his plan to avoid leading like a tyrant, and so instituted sweeping changes that included trials by jury, taxation by representation, and forgiveness of the poor's debts. These predictions always cost her dearly. Not only was the Pythia sent into a hallucinogenic frenzy each time she supposedly communicated with Apollo, not only did she tremble and shake and often writhe in an apparent intoxication of agony, eventually this holy office would result in 3 or 4 days of wild delirium and finally death. The women who served as the oracle did not live out natural lives, in other words. Hearing the whispers of a god always took their lives prematurely. It was then the role of a new Pythia to take her place and ensure the continuation of this most sacred and most important of Greek traditions. The cause of the oracle's divine madness has long been attributed to the vapors that she inhaled while receiving the prophecies of Apollo. Even back in the time of Strabo, a geologist who lived from 64 BCE to 25 CE, the unique geographical features of the area were suspected to be the cause of the vapors. The seat of the oracle is a cavern, hollowed down in the depths, from which arises pneuma, meaning breath or vapor or gas, that inspires a divine state of possession. And ever since, scientists have argued about the nature of these gases, or whether they even existed at all. Some believed that the vapors were intentionally created by assistants at the temple to give the illusion of Apollo's breath entering the sacred chamber. It wasn't until 1995, when a team of archaeologists, chemists, geologists, and toxicologists finally put together a theory that remains the frontrunner in terms of explaining the mystical powers of Delphi. The temple sat above a series of fault lines, natural springs, and bituminous, meaning oil-bearing, limestone, with a petrochemical content of up to 20%. Seismic activity along the fault lines heats the rock, which vaporizes the lighter petrochemicals and pushes the vapors upwards along the face of the faults. The team concluded that this is what happened at Delphi. Intermittently produced gases rose up along the intersection of 2 fault lines over which the oracle sat, and essentially, to paraphrase their own words, got her stoned. Further research into the spring water around Delphi has shown that the sweet-smelling hydrocarbon gas ethylene, even Plutarch described the vapors as having a sweet, pleasant smell, is present in small amounts and would have accounted for the intoxication and ultimate death of the women who inhaled it regularly. In low concentrations, ethylene produces a trance-like state. In higher concentrations, unconsciousness and even death. The symptoms are eerily similar to those who inhale or huff hydrocarbon gas today in the form of glue, paint thinner, etc., in order to get high. As with any ancient phenomenon, it's hard to know precisely what happened or how, and there are still those who discount the ethylene gas theory. But we do know that gradually the oracle's power and influence diminished, and it could well have been because the vapors gradually subsided, due to further changes in the underlying geology of the region. Whatever the case, at least we have some understanding as to why the Hellenic world believed one of their gods was guiding their lives and prophesying their future through the trance-like state of a mystical woman. And by the way, the ruins at Delphi are now a UNESCO World Heritage Site that you can visit. I've included a link below for those who may want to ask Apollo a few questions themselves. That's it for now. Join me next time for another fascinating look at medicine in history, culture, and the arts.